You're listening to the soothing sounds of the world according to Jen and Carolyn. Skiddly bop!
Good afternoon, Jennifer.
It's a fine inauguration day. It's a great day to be an American.
Yeah.
Not for half of us, it's not.
No, not. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King is rolling over in his grave.
Yeah, I've been saying that pretty consistently, and I think it's a thing. And I think that there is nothing more contrary to all of the work that went on during the civil rights movement and subsequently, and then all the other movements like the women's rights movement and all that shit. Mm-hmm. There is nothing more antithetical to that than the inauguration and subsequent presidency of this person.
Well, how about Trump actually quoting MLK?
Oh, God. He's done that before, and it really bothers me.
It's so tone deaf, and I know you did your media blackout. I had to watch it.
No, thank you. And I'm drinking. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Whatever self-care you need today, I honor it.
I appreciate that. It's also, I'm drinking because I'm sure if MLK were here, he would be having a drink as well, going, what the fuck is happening? Yeah. What has happened to this country?
It's happened.
It has happened. And by the way, I saw on YouTube the Nazi salute that Blanca told us about that Elon did. And that is absolutely bone chilling.
The whole thing was, I mean, we could do a whole episode just on that spectacle. It was gross.
Well, I think there needs to be, there will be a forthcoming episode on what Biden referred to as the tech industrial complex, reminiscent of Eisenhower's
oligarchy.
Yeah.
Damn it, I can't say that. So I better learn how to say that.
If you're not familiar, Eisenhower did a famous speech about being aware of the military industrial complex, which clearly has come to pass and is a very scary thing. But the tech industrial complex seems to be kind of the new iteration of that. So I think we'll need to do something on that. But that's not what we're here about today. Although I think there could be some interconnectivity.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're going to talk about the history of boycotts, whether or not boycotts are still effective. If boycotts are still effective, is it the monetary component depriving corporations of revenue that makes them effective, or is it a social media component or just a media component that compels corporations to want to make changes if enough people make enough noise? So I don't think we talk about this as much as we should, boycotts, that is. But considering that the founding of this country technically started with the American revolutionaries boycotting British goods, we think it's important to discuss their history as well as where boycotts have worked and where they could work again. So, we're going to delve into this a bit. We're going to talk about this tactic, and we're going to talk about, spoiler alert, how the right has recently co-opted what has, historically been a social justice, progressive tactic.
Yeah.
So the definition of a boycott, let's start with that. So this is from the dictionary. It's to withdraw from commercial or social relations with a country, organization, or person as a punishment or protest, a punitive ban that forbids relations with certain groups, cooperation with a policy, or the handling of goods. So, Carolyn, are you boycotting anything right now?
Yeah, Starbucks, Amazon. I know you and I are working really hard on that one. That's a tough one for us.
That is a really hard one.
Home Depot. I really didn't have a hard time boycotting Chick-fil-A. Don't think I've never tried it. It's not that great.
Okay.
I don't actually think it's that great. And it's really yucky. McDonald's. Yeah. I mean, I think that anytime, let me put it this way. I try really hard, rather than avoiding certain companies, I try to really think about where I am investing.
I think that's
my money
important.
And what I'm investing it on and what the product is and who that CEO is. And as I do my best with the information that I have and asking people and trying to be resourceful in that.
Totally.
Does it always work? No.
Yeah.
But again, for the most part, it's very, I find it living in where we live, being the means I'm in, it's not difficult by any means for me to shop local, to, you know, I love my butterfly joint.
Hit that Etsy store.
Balboa. But I always felt that way about coffee anyway. I always rather go to
Starbucks
a small place.
Really bad coffee
too.
Yeah. They're not going to sue us. We're too small time, but it's burnt. And it always gives me the shits.
Does it
if
really?
ever I need a laxative, Starbucks is where I go. But I too am boycotting it for their shitting on people trying to unionize.
Yeah. So they just did so many weird things. Remember the thing where it was like try to have a conversation about race relations? It's like, no.
That was a very poor attempt at having dialogue. Yeah. Their hearts were in the right place, but that was definitely one of those like theory versus applications. What did we say in grad school? Impact versus intent.
Yeah.
Impact versus intent. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty much trying to boycott a lot of the same things. And like you, I am trying to use my money to support businesses that, you know, like the jewelry I sent you, there's this necklace that I want that says, don't fucking touch me.
Don't buy it, Jen.
No. I want to buy it.
No, I don't want you to buy it.
Well, because you want to give me a hug?
No, because
I won't buy.
I maybe bought it for you.
Okay, so I ruined my birthday.
It's really hard to buy Jen presents. She buys herself everything.
I ruined my birthday present. But thank you, by the way, in advance. But when you look at that company, it's definitely queer people doing the modeling, people of color. Like it is all protest jewelry.
Yes.
It's like big ass hoops that say fuck the patriarchy and shit.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I want to spend my money.
Well, and I feel like during the pandemic because I was never a huge internet shopper, but that became like Mess in a Bottle is one of my favorite Black female owned brands. And
Mess
like
in a Bottle, I
following
love
places where, you know, again, where it's like, wow, I really feel like I know you. I like your product. I'm happy to wear it. People talk to me when I'm wearing it. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think the internet makes shopping at a diversity of businesses whose ethics align with our own makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they're telling the truth.
Well, and so that's the hard part, right?
Yes.
But I also feel like in this day and age,
you can figure it out.
There's enough trolls out there.
That's right.
Sometimes they work in our favor. Because I feel like if you're paying attention and you're trying, you can avoid a lot of that.
You can suss out the posers.
Yes.
The perpetrators, man.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about the history of boycotts. We're going to focus on the U.S. Shout out to ChatGPT, which is really making our lives easier. Look, we know our subject matter, but ChatGPT is awesome because it aggregates all of our research.
Yes.
And it's great because we're not looking at individual sources, you know,
which often are repetitive anyway.
Yes, exactly. So if you ask ChatGPT to include, peer-reviewed sources, which is typically what we ask for, you're going to get peer-reviewed sources.
Yes.
So the internet giveth and taketh away. Said it once. I'll say it. That's all dial that fucking help.
There you go.
All right. Let's talk about the Stamp Act boycott. This is way back from 1765 to 1766. American colonists boycotted British goods to protest taxation without representation, such as the Stamp Act and later the Townsend Acts. I should know this. This is like the birth of our country. Then we had the tea boycott and the Boston Tea Party. This was in 1773. This was the refusal to buy taxed British tea, culminated in the Boston Tea Party, symbolizing resistance to British control. Fuck your tea.
Yeah.
Free produce movement, 1820s to 1830s. Abolitionists boycotted goods produced by enslaved labor. Hell yeah. Such as sugar and cotton, to undermine the economic foundation of slavery. Pullman strike boycott. I love this one. 1894. Workers and allies boycotted Pullman Company rail cars to protest unfair labor practices and wage cuts. Then we had the California grape boycott, 1965 to 1970. This is Cesar Chavez, organized by the United Farm Workers. Under Cesar, the boycott aimed to secure better wages and working conditions for farm laborers. Then we had the Montgomery bus boycott. This should have come first, actually. This is 1955 to 1956. This was sparked by our girl Rosa Parks' arrest. And this was a year-long boycott of segregated buses in Montgomery, Alabama, became a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement, leading to Supreme Court ruling that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. God damn it. Can you imagine? My mom cleaned houses for a living. Can you imagine at the end of the day after you've cleaned possibly 2 houses, because sometimes my mom would do 2 in a day, being like, this is important. I'm not taking this bus. I'm fucking walking home.
Yeah.
Like I could not imagine doing that kind of labor and saying, nope, this is about the cause. But you have to.
Yes.
You'd have to. Jesus. And then you had the Woolworths lunch counter sit-in. This was back in 1960. I always remember this one. Yeah, totally. This was in all our history books, right? I remember I can see the photos, images.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Though not a formal boycott, sit-ins at segregated lunch counters were complemented by boycotts of businesses that practiced racial discrimination. Then we had anti-apartheid boycotts in the 1980s. I always remember, I think it was the first Lethal Weapon. You're in Danny Glover's house, and you can see the fridge and the magnets on the fridge. And one of them is like, stop apartheid or end apartheid. I was like, yeah. Danny Glover was big in the anti-apartheid movement.
Isn't he a San Francisco guy too?
San Francisco guy, went to the SF State, huge activist.
No, he's an SF State dude. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he might have gone to USF maybe for graduate, but he's a state dude. Yay. Love him. Anyway, then we had the Vietnam War boycotts. So that was 1960s and 70s, boycotts of companies associated with war materials. You also saw people taking to the street. So that was a big comprehensive movement. And think about that. That was a multi-pronged movement, as all of these were. Yeah. Boycotting is just one element of a larger movement if you want it to be effective. The Nestle boycott. So Nestle, I think, is actually made in Israel. Might be an Israeli company. I don't know, but I think it is. This one, though, was in 1977, and it was organized to protest the company's promotion of infant formula in developing countries, which was seen as unethical and harmful. I don't know much about that one.
I never heard. Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Look that up.
Exxon boycott, 1989. Environmental groups boycotted Exxon after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, which caused severe ecological damage. I remember that too. Coors Beer Company boycott. So 1970s and 1980s, LGBTQ plus activists boycotted Coors for its alleged discriminatory hiring practices and support for anti-gay causes. Here's Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A boycott. 2012 protests and boycotts targeted Chick-fil-A after publicized donations to organizations opposing same-sex marriage. Right. Prop 8. Nike boycott.
I remember this one
2018. Too. Hell yeah. Some Americans boycotted Nike after it featured Colin. Oh, no.
Oh, so I was thinking of the 90s one.
We're thinking of the sweatshop one.
Yeah.
Yes, which is, we're going to talk about Naomi Klein, who did, I think it's called No Logos or something like that, was the anti-sweatshop, anti-globalization book. This actually is shitty. This was in 2018. Some Americans boycotted Nike after it featured Colin Kaepernick, an NFL player known for kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality in an ad campaign. Now I protest the NFL.
Yeah.
Between the way that they allow players to get away with abuse of women or have in the past, along with the way they treated my boy Colin, fucking done. So then we had the Bud Light boycott. This is where we get into the more bigots, guys. So this was in 2023. I'm sure you all remember boycotts arose over the company's partnership with a transgender influencer, sparking a cultural debate over inclusivity. What's her name? Dylan Mulvaney, right? Is that her name?
I don't remember.
She's gorgeous. Dylan Mulvaney, I think. Then we had the Georgia election law boycotts, 2021. Companies and events like Major League Baseball moved operations out of Georgia in protest of new voting laws perceived as suppressive, which is bad fucking ass. Yeah, we're not going where you are suppressing the vote, primarily the black vote. So boycotts have definitely historically served as powerful tools for marginalized groups to affect social change and challenge systemic injustices. So here are several ways in which boycotts empower these communities. So one, it amplifies voices, it raises awareness, gives people a platform. Right? It's collective action. You're drawing public attention to these very justifiable grievances. Then you're exercising economic influences. I am refusing to purchase goods from this company because they're a bunch of bigots, for instance. Fostering solidarity and community mobilization. Influencing policy and institutional change. Look at the anti-apartheid boycotts of the 1980s, for example. They actively contributed to international pressure that eventually led to the dismantling of apartheid in South Africa.
That's pretty big, dude. Yeah. It just takes one person. Like I always think of Rosa Parks in that sense that no one... Well, she often said, like, no, I felt like Dr. King was telling that was for me.
Yeah.
And I did that. Yeah. Well, not in a narcissistic way, but like, I just couldn't, I decided no more.
Yeah. And I think she might have been a larger part of the movement. And obviously this was collective action. It was a single individual who was pointed to in history as sparking, kind of a turning point. But it was a lot of people standing behind her.
Which takes guts.
Totally.
Because you're putting yourself in a position where as someone who does not want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
You're doing something to basically get in trouble.
Yeah.
pull that not attention, but that's frightening.
It is frightening. And back in those days, and even these days, obviously, look at poor Ahmaud Arbery just going for a fucking run and getting gunned down by some redneck pieces of shit. Like, back then, a white man could have done terrible things to her and probably faced little to no justice.
Right.
And so you're literally putting your life on the line. So, and then the last thing is, enhancing visibility and legitimacy. So participating in boycotts can elevate the visibility and legitimacy of marginalized groups' concerns. And then you get social media coverage, regular media coverage, public discourse. Look at the Nestle boycott of 1977, which we have no familiarity with, but that was over, again, the infant formula. And it led to the establishment of an international marketing code for breast milk substitutes. So God only knows what was in this stuff to prompt these sorts of requirements.
That's all I think of when I think of Nestle. Nestle's gross chocolate too. Go for C's.
Yeah, it's not my favorite.
It's not C's. I'm not eating it.
Yeah, C's is
C's. I will not boycott you. Please don't be fucked up.
Oh no, they're union. They're awesome. Good. C's we trust.
Okay.
So we know from the history that boycotts can work. The question is, do they work because they impact a company's revenue, have a negative impact on image, or is it a combination of all these factors? So this is from Forbes. According to research from Harvard political scientist Erica Chenoweth, only about 3.5% of the population's participation is needed to create serious political change. No action is too small, and we must remember that any rock, no matter how small, that is thrown into the pond of liberation will create a ripple effect that contributes to greater societal shifts for years to come. That should have been the fucking final thought. I got to stop moving away from the mic. Bill, our producer, he's like, I can tell. He's like, I want to watch you record because I can tell, like, you're all over the fucking place, and I can hear you moving in and out. It's very hard for me to sit still as an Italian American. It's so hard
to not move my hands because I'm so worried I'm going to knock the mic over. The things we're doing, I almost need to sit on them.
Jews and Italians, we're a fucking mess. So
we're also very theatrical.
We are. So this is from the Institute for Policy Research at Northwestern. According to IPR Associates, Braden King, a professor of management and organizations, activists who call for boycotts usually set out to put financial pressure on a company by convincing consumers to shop elsewhere. But it turns out that's not the way that boycotts usually work, he explained. The typical boycott doesn't have much impact on sales revenue. One reason is consumers' habitual nature. Even people who publicly denounce a company might still purchase the company's products. Plus, the people boycotting a company might not be its target consumers. So this was a good example. Think of PETA activists who are boycotting KFC. He said, that's a boycott that's not going to have much of an impact on sales or revenue. The average KFC consumer is going to be like, oh, I eat animals. Like, why the fuck would I care? Yeah. Nevertheless, boycotts can be effective. According to King's research, he finds that while boycotts rarely hurt revenue, they can threaten a company's reputation, especially by generating negative social media coverage. The number one predictor of what makes a boycott effective is how much media attention it creates, not how many people sign onto a petition or how many customers it mobilizes. So that's what he says. So, there's all these media pressure campaigns. I'm only going to talk about two, and they have to do with the right because, again, they're co-opting our strategies. So McDonald's adjusting its diversity initiatives. This just happened last year because under pressure from conservative activists, McDonald's announced it would no longer set specific diversity targets or require suppliers to commit to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Then Ford revises their DEI policies just last year. Same thing. Bunch of right-wingers came out the cuts, and they're buying Ford. That is their target demographic, just as McDonald's is their target demographic.
Right.
So it worked. So, these activist campaigns played a significant role in prompting these unfortunate changes. This is why we shop at Costco, because they will not fucking budge. They're like, you need us more than we need you, motherfucker. Yeah. Try not to come to Costco with your 50 kids, bitch. So, Carolyn.
It's so true.
It's so true.
I don't even have the 50. I just need to go up and down the aisles.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you and Bill, it's very soothing for you.
Very.
Yeah. So, Carolyn, can you speak to the psychology?
Yeah.
It drives me insane because there's no science. So I don't know. I have like a general sense of what's down each aisle, but if I remember correctly, there's no science telling you what is down each aisle.
Know what you're going to see.
Maybe that's it. The element of surprise shopping.
I like. It's like you never know. Oh no, you and Mario can go, and me and Bill will go.
Yeah,
because it's my childhood, we'd go to Costco and we'd like go up and down the aisles and you'd find something. And then if I brought it to my dad, he'd be like, yeah, you can have that box of 200 crayons, Carolyn.
This is why every time we go to Costco, I'm like, how the fuck did we spend $500?
True.
What did we buy? Anyway, not going to talk about our spending habits and how they need to change. Carolyn, can you speak to the psychology of consumer habits that may contribute to someone either not boycotting a product or worse, say they're boycotting when they're really not?
Oh, I love this question because it reminds me.
Because I ordered something from Amazon yesterday.
But you tried to find it elsewhere. It's not all you, Jen.
Don't.
All right.
Please don't justify my behavior. Okay. It's bad, but I am buying a lot less. I'm working on it, you guys. Tell me why I'm so fucked.
No, I mean, I get it. These types of performative, like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. Like, it reminds me of when people take a break from social media, but before they do it, they have to write a post, like prophesizing about why they're taking a break. It's like, good for you. Like, go fuck yourself.
Nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah, seriously. But okay. So the study, I want to talk a little bit about the study of consumer behavior.
Okay.
Through the psychological lens. This really began early 20th century. Mm-hmm. And there's some key figures and milestones. So we have Walter Dill Scott, regarded as a pioneer in applying psychology to business. And so emphasizing the role of psychology in advertising. Okay. We talked about this term habituation. I'm going to get to that. So he wrote a really great book called The Psychology of Advertising in Theory and Practice, 1903. Mm-hmm. And it laid all this groundwork for basically how to sell to people. And another guy, Edward Bernays, his book Propaganda, 1928, looked at how psychological principles could be used to shape opinions and consumer decisions. So we've got, there's many others.
He wrote a book called Propaganda,
1928.
Hot.
John Watson, founder of behaviorism. So this came before you might see like Watson and Skinner. B.F. Skinner was very more famous, I think, academically.
He was.
Watson left academia to work actually in advertising. That's why we don't hear about him as much. But he applied a lot of these behavioral psychology principles to marketing, emphasizing the importance of emotions and habits in consumer decision making. And anyone who's tried to make a behavior change knows that their habits and really understanding that actually is what makes the change successful or not. And lastly, Ernest Dichter,
I like Dichter,
psychologist and market researcher, introduced the concept of motivational research, also motivational interviews, which I'm a huge fan of, emphasize understanding subconscious motives using Freudian theory to explain why consumers buy certain products.
Okay.
So, what's the brand? It's that French Bon Maman. That jam.
Oh, yes.
I only buy that jam because my mom only bought that jam because her grandmother told her that that they refused to be Nazi sympathizers.
Do you know if that's
France.
True or not?
See, that's the thing. I don't actually know. And actually, when I was thinking about this, I meant to look that up.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but I always was like, oh, we should buy this. It's Jewish jam.
I have several generations of Jewish jam, potentially like propaganda. We don't know.
I have no idea.
What if they made jam for the Nazis?
I have no idea.
No, my entire belief system is fucking shattered.
Hey, I'm ready to switch if I'll look it up before this episode's done.
Though.
It's really good jam.
I love it.
And it like helps save Jews. So anyway, all right. So, we always got to understand where a lot of this research comes from. But yes, to answer your question, there are psychosocial factors that absolutely matter when it comes to why people may or may not participate in a boycott, and they falsely claim they are. So number one, I love this one, cognitive dissonance, the discomfort people feel when their actions conflict with their values and how they resolve this tension, often by changing attitudes or rationalizing behavior. So this really explains, I think, why people lie. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, this explains why I do the boycott, because I'll feel too guilty if I say I'm going to do something and then I don't do it. I feel bad.
Yeah.
It actually works inversely, that you could lie because it doesn't align with your public image or your values.
That's true.
Right. So, all right. So convenience and habit. I think this one is true for a lot of, again, if you're a single parent, if you've got a lot of kids, if you only have a Walmart in your area, you don't have access to all these other things.
Right.
So there's a ton of data on how habits guide consumer behavior and the challenges of breaking habit patterns. You might aim to do the boycott, but if it's ingrained in your habit, or if it's part of your day, or if it's just all you have access to, what, you don't really have a lot of ways of avoiding that. I like this one, the halo effect, minimal action. We've talked about this before.
We have.
Again, remember when people on social media replaced their photo, I think it was on Facebook, and it was like an equal sign for France. I don't even, this is terrible. I don't even remember what the, was it the bombing?
It was the Charlie Hebdo, killings, wasn't it, in France?
I think it's terrible. I don't even remember. But anyway, and then every single tragedy, you would do the same thing. And I remember I got something really fucked up. I took a photo. It was like a Ralph Wiggum photo, and he put a Palestinian flag on his face, and it just goes, "Look, I'm helping," and I've made that my profile picture.
It's so true.
Well, yeah, because again, you're not really doing anything. You're just performing and saying, "Oh, look at me," so that you could be seen by everyone. But it's not really doing anything.
It's performative.
Yeah. So, again, unless you're actually following through, you're just publicly aligning yourself with the cause, and you're getting that social media validation, but it doesn't require any significant change. This, I think, is a more important one, the social pressure and image management. So it's harder and harder nowadays to keep things secret. Yeah. Especially if you are more famous and people are looking at you and watching you. So it's a lot easier to fit in socially by saying you support something, but no one ever really knows what you're doing. Like, you could have not said the Amazon thing and I wouldn't have known. Yeah.
I tell on myself, I felt guilty.
Well, right. But, again, I'm not judging you. This, I was interested to hear you say the thing about the effectiveness, because there is a perceived effectiveness that if someone believes their participation won't make a difference, they're likely to not do it.
Yes.
And that's what bums me out when you think about someone like Rosa Parks, one person saying no.
Right.
Or really the Me Too movement, like, people are doing it, but, you break one bamboo stick, but if you put them all together, they're not breakable. It's like that unity in the masses that I think is so important
and
right now.
And it's also timing too. I think that's really important. Have you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it has to be the right time, the right place, and to an extent, the right person. There was another person that did Paul Revere's ride on the same night that Paul Revere did. He did all the same shit, but it's Paul Revere we remember, and there's all these components that are associated
did
with
he just
why
have
it's
a less
him.
Cool name?
Maybe. He wasn't as hot. I don't know, dude.
He was like Abel Sampson.
Yeah. Paul Revere sounds way cooler. Beastie Boys album and everything.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's something to that too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about the bystander effect, where individuals feel their contributions insignificant in the larger scheme, but actually the two are kind of related, because that perceived futility of action can outweigh their moral inclination to actually act. I think this one really resonates right now. Emotional detachment.
Yes.
There are so many things to be angry about, and basically anything corporate nowadays, it's really hard to find something ethical and local that's not having an environmental impact. It's like, and people, I think, from the goodness of their heart, are trying their best. Yeah. But it can get overwhelming. And again, if you don't feel that something is directly like, well, my little purchase isn't really going to make a difference. It's really only these 7 companies that are really contributing. Yeah. Not just little. I mean, I do think that, like, when we talk about recycling, like, there is that sort of like, well, yes, that's important, but is it really making an impact? We won't tell your husband I just said that.
He thinks recycling, unfortunately, is something that was invented by the plastic company. Right. And only about 10% of post-consumer plastics are recyclable. And so much of the shit that we put into the recycling bin goes into a fucking landfill. Yeah. It's disgusting. Yep. So recycling is, to an extent, a sham, but I still do it. Makes me feel better.
Favorite book, Michael Franti's Away. He wrote Michael Franti, the musician and activist.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I was like, he's a musician.
Yes. Well, and Social Poly, all these different things. But yeah, he wrote Away, and it's all about that. Like, it's like, well, where's Away now? Right. So, okay, we talked about overwhelm and boycott fatigue. I'll talk about that more later. Marketing and brand loyalty. Like, again, this idea that if your parent did something, or you're just used to it, or that's all you have access to. Rationalization and justification. There's this book called The Net Delusion, The Dark Side of Internet Freedom. Oh. And it talks about this term slacktivism, where individuals feel satisfied with minimal online action, like sharing a post, without deeper engagement. Right. And consumers often rationalize their actions to align with their values. For instance, they might justify continuing to buy a product and convincing themselves that maybe the company's trying to improve or that it won't really hurt that much. So, again, there's all these different internal narratives, but this is what I love about it. It's all, the problem is you, and also the problem is you.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, yes, you can absolutely impart change.
Right.
What I think is difficult, because I'm that person at Starbucks, everyone at my work goes and gets Starbucks. And I'm that person who's like, oh, no, thank you. Or I'll get gift cards for that and I'll give them away. I'm like, oh, no, thank you. And people are like, oh, you don't like it? And I'm like, how do I not sound like a stuck up, like asshole right now? Like,
like you're preaching.
No, I don't like, and I just say, oh, it's not my favorite coffee. Yeah. I like this place, but it's really hard. Yeah. Unless you're, and that tells you a little bit about my audience of coworkers. I'm not trying to start that with them. Yeah. But again, it's consumer psychology and our connection emotionally to brands. Actually, there's research that it's as deep as a relationship.
Interesting.
The same things. Like, and I've experienced this as a female, like when my favorite lipstick brand goes discontinued. I'm like, I can't have another brand. Like I can't find another shade. It's like, girl, there's tons of fucking shades. You're fine.
Think of one brand that I'm totally married to.
Juicy Tubes. I'm obsessed with
really.
Juicy Tubes.
There's nothing. You know what? I like trying new things.
I love. You're very good at that. I am a creature of habit. There's this one brand I loved from Clinique called Sugar Bean, and it was my favorite color. And I stocked up on like 20 of them when they stopped making it. And then I get you are really good at that. I get really weird about like trying something new. Oh man,
there's so much good, amazing shit on the market, especially now that I'm gravitating toward more eco-friendly products. Now it sounds like a sanctimonious, elitist fucking coastal twat. Yay! I care about the environment and about putting poison on my face.
Yes.
Except important. For the botulism I put into my face.
That's different.
Way fucking different.
So again, just, there's intrinsic, extrinsic influences. It all matters.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. That's not not esoteric. What's the word? Like philosophical.
Yeah, it all matters, man.
So enlightened, bro. Yeah. I swear we're not high. Not yet.
Not yet. No.
I'm going to need it after today. So boycotts are an incredibly complementary tool to use with other conventional methods of mass protest like marches. Boycotts are rad because, like we said, they deprive corporations and their shareholders of money. Just look again at what those MAGA morons did with Bud Light. According to NPR, in the second quarter of 2023, Anheuser-Busch reported a revenue decrease of over 10% in the United States compared to the same period the previous year, primarily due to declining Bud Light sales. All I can see in my head right now is stupid ass Kid Rock taking a semi-automatic weapon, taking an AR-15 and shooting Bud Light cans. Oh, you haven't seen that?
No.
Oh, this is what we think of you, Bud Light. Just fucking blowing away. I'm like, wow, you have 3 brain cells. Two are fighting while the third watches. Like, you are really like the decline. You represent the decline of American civilization, bro. Congratulations. You shoot them beer cans. So again, are you noticing a theme here? Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about these right-wing MAGA nut boycotts. So boycotts, again, they've historically been our thing. They're our thing. Progressive movements for social justice. Yeah, but increasingly, they've been adopted as a tool by conservative groups to advance their own bullshit agendas, hateful agendas. The tactic has proven effective for both ideological sides, allowing conservatives to mobilize consumers' behavior and challenge corporations or institutions perceived as promoting progressive values. So, amplifying cultural concerns. These boycotts often focus on hot button issues such as LGBTQ plus rights, DEI initiatives, or perceived progressive overreach. Some companies, such as Target, responded by altering product offerings or marketing strategies, reflecting the immediate influence of these campaigns. And Target, had taken heat from the LGBTQ plus community as well, when they were selling a bunch of LGBTQ plus stuff, because it was corporate. Well, but prior to that, it was like rainbow washing. Yes. That's what it was called. It's like, oh, corporations are jumping on this because it's cool. And then pulling back, even more uncool. So they totally acquiesced to the pressure.
Yeah.
Not here in California. You still see all the Pride stuff here in the Target stores, but I'm sure in other states, maybe even other parts of California that aren't San Francisco, you'd see pulling back on those products. So the challenges and criticisms, right? So selective outrage. Critics argue that some conservative boycotts are driven by cultural and ideological conflicts rather than broader ethical concerns. Now, this pisses me off. I do not like calling rights for LGBTQ folks, particularly trans folks, because they're the ones who are most under fire cultural issues. These are human rights issues and these are civil rights issues. This is with this last fucking election. Oh, Democrats focus too much on cultural issues. First of all, no, they didn't. No, we didn't. I barely heard a peep about that stuff, but I'm sure if you would ask Harris and Walz, they wouldn't deny that they care about these things.
Right.
But also it's like, dude, since when is caring about human rights and people's dignity a bad thing? And like a niche issue. That's what pisses me off.
Yeah, agreed.
So, we got that component to it. Backlash, boycotts can backfire as companies may gain support from progressive consumers who oppose the boycott. I wish we had all just started drinking nasty ass Bud Light and maybe we could have turned the tide here. But also, didn't they know who their primary consumers were when they did this? Like, it's frat boys and white trash. Sorry, I'm feeling real today because we are inaugurating the biggest moron ever to walk the face of the earth. Some bloviating, raping, racist windbag who even during his inauguration speech spit lies.
Yeah.
Spit fucking lies. Anyway. Long-term efficacy. While conservative boycotts can create short-term disruptions, they do not always result in lasting changes to corporate behavior. So we think those of us on the left are fucking exhausted and there's evidence to support this claim. So what's going on with us? Like you mentioned, feeling like nothing I do makes a difference.
Yeah.
We are in a red wave of totalitarianism and it's bad. So this concept of protest fatigue is a real one, and it refers to a sense of exhaustion or disengagement that individuals or movements may experience after prolonged periods of activism, often due to limited perceived progress, overwhelming challenges, or burnout. Among progressives, there is evidence suggesting that some groups and individuals may be experiencing protest fatigue in the face of ongoing battles for social, economic, and environmental justice. Look at how hard folks fought around the Black Lives Matter movement and what happened to, Mike Brown and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And there were accomplishments made. And now with all the things I mentioned with these conservative boycotts and now with the election of Donald Trump, it's almost impossible not to feel like, dude, it's one step forward, two steps back.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you say that that's the nature of activism, though, in general? And I think what's interesting, ironic, I don't know, tell me, I'm going to talk this out. Tell me if you think there's a correlation here. I absolutely, in the time I've been practicing as a therapist, I often get clients where that's the primary reason they're coming.
Yeah.
Is mentally feeling disillusioned.
Yeah.
And these are really valuable sessions.
Yeah.
And a clearly a problem.
Right.
And I think that's always been a thing. I don't think that anyone can say that hasn't. But what I find interesting is that anytime you have activism, it doesn't change overnight.
No.
And you've often mentioned this, that I wonder if there's this connection between things are pretty instantaneous nowadays.
Right. I
mean, I get mad when I, have to wait 2 days for something, to come in the mail because I am so used to Amazon. God damn, they get it here quick.
Yeah.
Because they're fucking with their workers. But, I wonder if there has something to do with that people were more like understanding of, hey, it's going to take a while, like progress doesn't happen overnight. And with that said, should it be taking so long?
Well, so we do live in an instant gratification culture. And also these systems, I always say this, these systems of oppression weren't built up overnight. And these systemic systems of oppression are very adaptable and very inclined to change to meet whatever the challenge is. And right now, I think the primary challenge is to white supremacist patriarchy. And I think those who are in charge that fall into that category are desperate to hold on to that. So they're going to fight tooth and nail, and we have to come at them just as hard. And we need to keep reiterating to people, and we're going to talk about this later, change does not come overnight. It's that old phrase, Rome wasn't built in a day, but the motherfucker certainly burned down real fast.
Right.
So it is up to us, though the change might be incremental, though the progress might come slowly, if we're not there I always think of like Lord of the Rings, like holding the fucking line. You're holding the line. Everything to me is a fucking Lord of the Rings analogy because I don't understand
that analogy, but
just hold the line. Sometimes all you can do is hold the fucking line. Yeah. And it is exhausting. And it doesn't feel like progress. But if we're not there holding that line, the damage is swift, widespread, and possibly irreversible.
Right. Well, and who would know that better than Tolstoy?
Not Tolstoy.
Oh, wait. Who wrote
Tolkien? Tolstoy probably. He motherfucker wrote War and Peace, I think. But
I was thinking about the
Tolkien.
You know, again, where all that came from was from fighting in the trenches.
That was from primarily, I think, World War II was Tolkien. And this was...
I did watch that movie.
Yes. They were supposed to represent the various nation states.
Tolstoy, Tolkien.
Same shit. Potato. So, okay. Back to protest fatigue. Some folks are burned out on outrage, says Rebecca Lee Funk. This is from the New York Times, an article that just came out last year. The Washington-based founder of Outrage, a progressive activism group and a purveyor of resistance era apparel. I'm going to have to look into that. I need some resistance era apparel. People are tired. I think last election we were desperate to get Trump out of office and folks were willing to rally around that singular call to action. And this election feels different. So this is February 2024. So this is leading up to where we're at today. So
no, everything feels different.
Everything feels different.
And I think that speaks to as I'm saying all this, I'm like, anyone else who's not white is like, no fucking shit.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's been happening forever.
Right. And you feel these things more acutely, more intensely when you're a person of color, a queer person, etc. When you are on the margins and being systematically and further marginalized by this current administration, these fucking crazy people. So, Democrats are hardly alone in their political fatigue. There's a Pew Research Center survey that came out last year, found that 65% of Americans said they always or often felt exhausted when they thought about politics. Exhaustion is underlying the entire attitude toward our presidential election, said Whit Ayers, a veteran Republican pollster. When you've got two people that are opposed by 70% of Americans who want a different choice, it creates frustration, anxiety, and discouragement. Now, I'm not going to call Kamala a turd sandwich, but there was an episode of South Park where it was about an election.
Giant douche versus turd sandwich.
Yes, exactly. And
I feel South Park gets it right a lot of the time.
They really do. They're critical of both the left and the right. And I applaud them because they're just smart and insightful and they get it. They're around. I don't know what they've been saying.
Team America. Like, we need nothing else.
We do need Team America. So, Carolyn, talk to us about protest fatigue and what happens when we are fucking exhausted from fighting what feels like an unwinnable battle.
Yeah. Well, my heart aches for this right now because I really think, we're not just talking academically anymore. We're not talking socially. We're talking about people you and I know personally. We're talking about people in our lives.
Right.
And I think that feels so close to home right now. And people are psychologically burnt. The emotional, mental, physical exhaustion since the pandemic of everything that collectively we have been through as a society, nothing's the same anymore. And I still feel like we were kind of like, well, we came out of that and, so much happened, but it feels like nothing changed. And so many of the things were, and so I might have protest fatigue.
Yeah. Well, we put it back into place. Well, 50% of us did. The very person who
made it that way in the first
pandemic.
Well, so people really feel low, low motivation.
Yeah.
I think too that this is very heavily on some people's plates. And I have no way of backing this up. I don't know how you research this, but I don't know that everyone really is doing everything that they could do at the level that we need and that we're going to need and that we actually have to literally do.
Yeah. And we're not all in the same boat either. And that came out of the pandemic too, where, we're all in the same boat. It's just like the dumbass people who say, I don't see color. No, we're not all in the same boat.
Well, and that's what feels so fractured. And I think that that's what we have to remember, that that's in place for a reason.
Right.
That people benefit when we, and I'm speaking to liberals and to Democrats, when we feel fractured.
Yeah.
But really, I'm going to go a step further because at the end of the day, I'm pro-human.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people are hurting. And I don't see how an American who has these types of racist sentiments can be good and in a healthy place.
Yes.
And so I'm genuinely, as a human being, as a therapist, worried for our earth.
Yeah.
And, again, protest fatigue syndrome, well, it's not in the DSM. You would see things like feeling depressed.
Yeah.
Feeling anxious. And I mean, again, that's a low level that I just kind of feel all the time. And you have to actually go out and, I go for my walk and I go, okay, there are people and we're smiling, but then there's that feeling of like what side are you on? It's very polarized. It's very frightening.
Yes.
So Peter, if you want a wonderful article, Peter Moskowitz, published in January 2nd, 2018, discusses the emotional and psychological toll that activism, particularly following the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. You remember that one, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can't forget them white boys with tiki torches.
Yeah. So
dumb fucks.
Quote, there's a price for all this work, a tax that can't be paid with time and energy, but also with mental and physical health. So this article, he talks about the huge psychological toll that activists face following these traumatic, chaotic, and violent protests. You and I went to protests.
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I said I felt 100% comfortable going to them now, unless it's in a certain place or a certain time. I do get scared.
The possibility of violence on the scale that we're seeing these days, like with mass shootings, that didn't feel tangible then. Also, I do want to say, when I talk about us not all being in the same boat, I talk about us not all having the same time, resources, and access to be able to actually fight. Yeah. And so those of us with more time on our hands and resources, I feel like we have an even larger obligation to get out there and fight on behalf of our brothers, sisters, and everybody in between who can't be out there. And I know that sounds a bit white saviory, but that's certainly not the perspective that I'm coming from.
No.
We want to help to create change and then bring everybody with us to benefit from that change.
Right.
And the change that we wish to see is change that will positively benefit those who are the most marginalized and those who are the most vulnerable in our society.
Yeah.
So I feel like we, as middle-class white ladies,
we have a lot of work to do.
We got to be Karens for good, baby.
Yeah.
Go on.
Karens for good. Is that our new tagline?
I'm going to keep drinking my skinny hibiscus margarita and act like Donald Trump isn't our president. Please go on. Go on.
Oh, Jen, I love you. Moskowitz recounts the events leading up and during the rally, and he highlights some of the initial sense of unity among counter protesters and the subsequent trauma that, again, inflicted these violent incidents and the car attacks and the death of Heather Heyer.
Oh, God, that was so sad.
Quote, it's not just the physical injuries or arrests that linger. It's the psychological weight. We still feel that racism and that fascism, and it's not going away. And you have these moments, I think we were experiencing in San Francisco with the public schools and the text that went out, and I won't go into it, but you have this feeling of like,
go into it. That was some fucked up shit.
Someone, and nothing ever, I never found out even what happened with that.
I didn't follow it up. I don't have a child who goes to public school, but immediately following the election of Donald Trump, there was a text that went out, and I don't think it was just San Francisco. I think it went out to
it was all over
public school kids nationwide. These were middle schoolers who were getting texts that said, Donald Trump's president or something like that. Get ready to pick cotton, show up tomorrow for your shift. Like, can you imagine being 12 and getting that shit?
I can't imagine being 42 and getting that.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. And, and that's, we made a perfect point where this shit happens and you're like, whatever happened to that?
Yes.
It's moving so quickly.
And it's too frequent.
It's too frequent. It's happening on a rapid pace. And the more extreme, the more chaotic, the more violent.
Yeah.
That fits into the algorithm because that is what brings in views.
Yeah.
And so this is it's all part of it. It's all part of a larger scheme.
It is.
So activism often relies on the labor of those who are, like to your point, already the most vulnerable. And it's clear that the system cannot function like this forever.
No.
The personal impact of these events, including experiencing panic attacks, diminished capacity to engage in activism, that's protest fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're feeling if you're, and even within that, it doesn't ever feel like enough.
Yeah.
When you're actually seeing things and you're going, well, how can I, what can I do?
Yeah.
And I think that what I often will tell clients is look around you. Like first of all, you can take a break.
Yeah.
Your body's telling you you're not okay right now. That doesn't mean you don't care.
Right.
That actually means you need a break.
Right.
And you're doing something that's incredibly traumatizing. Yeah. And and I think there's this sense of like, oh, but I'm not even in it and I'm not even really experiencing anything.
Still impacts you.
Don't be a martyr. Take a break, but also that's what we need right now is community. In any way, I think that's what made TikTok so wonderful was finding this community of people. It's like, oh, they do agree with me. Yeah. But I really want to find that actually in my community.
Right.
That's what we need. And that's to me what activism and boycotts are about.
And I think we need to go back to basics. Like, granted, these are somewhat isolated societies, but when you watch the Blue Zone documentary, man, like the things that always stand out to me are quality food, right? And community. And you've got these people living to 100. There was a woman in Sardinia. And this one resonates with me a lot of my Italian culture. This woman lost her husband. Oh no, she's always been single. She's 100. She's always been single. I'm like, you go, girl. She's probably a fucking lesbian. Awesome. And so the women, her friends, take care of her. Yeah. And it's not a burden. They spend time with her. She is their family member. And this is why people are living longer in these places. Yeah. And so we need to the extent that we can, because American society is very different, deliberately so. But community is such a huge component of these things, or of the people's ability to flourish into their hundreds, right?
Yeah. She drank a glass of wine a day too.
And a glass of wine. You have to have a glass of wine. I was talking with, we go to Six Sigma a lot, and we were talking to the proprietor. Six Sigma is a wonderful winery in Lake County, and the proprietor is from Denmark. And we were talking about the Surgeon General's warning, just putting all alcohol into one big bucket, right?
I read about that.
He makes wine. And we're talking about wine, and we're talking about how wine is different. Yeah. Right. And everything in moderation, regardless of whether or not it's wine or another spirit or a spirit. But wine it's something that brings people together. It was in the fucking Bible. And the proprietor is a good Christian man. And we're like, dude, Jesus turned water into wine. He turned parties into like, right. That's what we know. But anyway, wine,
I know.
Takeaway, wine is good. Community is good. That's what we need. Yeah. So just go out.
Don't protest that.
I'll go out and protest in the street with my wine. So, okay. I know we're all fucking exhausted out here. Yes. Trust me, my personal and professional life largely revolve around politics, both my husband and I. My husband works for a union. I support our most vulnerable. I'm reticent to say where I work, but I work for government. I work on policies that support our most vulnerable communities, and all I do is, yeah. So it's inextricably linked to our very existence. And I'm lucky to work with a bunch of like-minded Democrats who are all committed to protecting our glorious progressive city from Trump. It's dope. So all we can say is keep fighting. Yeah. And this is from an analysis on why protests work. So we're gonna give you some hope. We've been trying to leave you with hope, because
always
you got to give them hope, like Harvey Milk said. So This is from an analysis called Why Protests Work Even When Not Everybody Likes Them. A small sampling of activity since the start of 2023 could note that animal rights advocates have disrupted the UK's Grand National Horse Race and Victoria Beckham's fashion show. Abortion rights protesters have been sentenced for impeding the proceedings of the US Supreme Court. Striking dock workers upended operations at 2 of Canada's 3 busiest ports, and climate protesters have blocked access to oil and gas terminals, chained themselves to aircraft gangways to prevent private jet sales, and spoken out forcefully at corporate shareholder meetings. Seems extra. I know. It pisses a lot of people off, especially when motherfuckers are blocking the bridge.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, cut to us when someone's... But actually, I'm like, turn your car off, have some water.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to work. Cool.
There are a lot of people who do have to get to work and don't get paid if they do not get to work. There are people in emergency situations. I get it, y'all. I do. I'm not going to go down this road right now, but just think about your impact on others, because it's privileged to say like, oh, you're inconvenienced for an hour. Well, the children of Palestine are dying,
but you're
for instance.
inconveniencing the wrong people.
But you're fucking with working class. Don't fuck with working class people, because they are there to be your allies, and you will lose them as allies if you do something that fucks with their ability to support their families and make a goddamn living. Anyway, I'm gonna get off that soapbox. So don't worry about being polarizing, which is the exact opposite of what I just said, but within reason, right? Protest actions are polarizing. This means that they force people to take sides on an issue. That's the important part, right? Yeah. And contrary to what some may think, that is not a bad thing when it's used for progressive ends. So take this one example. We talked about the civil rights movement. It was certainly polarizing, but we're really better off living with widespread and often bipartisan were we really better off living with widespread? We're so much better with Jim Crow. Now, were we better with bipartisan acceptance of Jim Crow segregation and the racist terror used to enforce it? Likewise,
we think so.
What's that?
I think some people would disagree, though.
Of course. And they are the ones that support the guy that just got inaugurated today. So likewise, defying prevalent homophobia and affording equal marriage rights for LGBTQ couples involved considerable controversy and required politicians to take stands that most had long preferred to avoid. Like Gavin Newsom when he was mayor of San Francisco. Like it or not, it was still unpopular amongst Democrats to do what he was doing, supporting gay marriage equality, and like literally being the person marrying these people. And he was like, nope, this is important to me. And now look, everybody else has fallen into line. Somebody has to be the first, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has to be the first to say Medicare for all. Now you have more and more Democrats saying what Bernie, primarily alone, maybe with Elizabeth Warren and a few other people, were saying. Yeah. And now it's a rallying cry.
But why does it always have to be a white man?
I know. Or a white woman. I know.
Or a white woman. That's the thing. It's like Caitlyn Jenner had to get up on that. Where has Caitlyn been, by the way?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing.
We don't need a Republican ass.
But I think that's a frustrating thing, is that people are like, I don't want to wait.
Yeah.
This is not making, especially young people now. They're like, well, this just doesn't, talk to a teenager and like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
What's the problem, government? Come on.
I know.
Today.
I know they're people definitely, we live in this instant gratification society. And we have these incredible devices in our pocket, right? We have computers in our pocket. Use them to educate yourselves on movements. Stop the
Paul, you still can.
I know. I mean, and schools aren't, some are, but teaching young people how to do research that results in fact-based information instead of propaganda and alternative facts that woman who looks like Beavis created. Remember, she created that term? What the fuck was her name? She was awful. She was in the first Trump administration.
Oh, but God. She was.
She looks like Beavis. Anyway, so a safe rule of thumb for protesters is that if they're acting nonviolently in pursuit of a just goal, taking a stand is far better than passivity or complacency. At the same time, in managing polarization, there's always room for organizers to improve their skills and refine their feel for shaping protest outcomes. So overall, the goal of the movement is to shift the spectrum of support in its favor. This is something that you and I think, are both struggling with, because I, for one, am having a difficult time, not that I've had many opportunities to do this, but having constructive or possibly constructive conversations with Trump supporters.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not at the point where I can have that happen. I know ultimately it's going to need to happen for us to be able to move forward as a country, find common ground, and hopefully never elect somebody like this again. So for movements to win, they do not need to convince their worst enemies to change. And we're not going to.
Right.
Instead,
they win. The middle ground.
Yes. They win by turning neutrals into passive supporters and turning passive sympathizers into active allies and movement participants. So haters, because they appeal to public cynicism, which remains very widespread about the ability of protest to make a difference at all, protest shaming pundits can find fertile ground for their arguments. However, their perspective is rarely based on a hard evaluation of contemporary research or deep engagement with the history of social movements. Remember that. And this is so perfect given that it is MLK Jr. Day. Activists are told to work within establishment channels to pursue change, to avoid controversy, and to be more patient with the system. The same counsel King wrote of having received from erstwhile allies many decades ago. Did he do that? He didn't fucking do that.
Well, but then you look at someone like Malcolm X.
He was way outside of the system, which I love. I love both of their voices.
Right.
And at times they were saying slightly different things, but the goal was essentially the same. And I like a more fiery motherfucker. Not that they're two very different people, but both incredibly important in history. And, you know, and as protesters, we can look to whichever example of somebody influential who made a big difference in history and emulate whatever works for us. Who appeals to you? Is it the ballot or the bullet? Or is it, you know, MLK's The Three Evils speech? So, but I think there's harmony for both to coexist. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. So here's some tips for getting started when it comes to organizing. So I'm going to go through these really quickly because we've been here a long time. So mass trainings, got to do mass trainings. It's a way to bring people together, get them involved in the movement, fosters a sustained involvement. Mass trainings are awesome. So this is all going to be in our show notes, guys. Making a model that can grow to scale and systematizing their trainings. So that's what's important. You can't just do a training and be like, that was great. Systematize it. And us Democrats, us left-wingers can be really airy-fairy. And this is where the
binder.
This is where the right has us beat. You've got to be organized. So balancing training, coaching, and action. This is the third idea that is essential in making a mass training program work, is balancing the leadership development that takes place in the group context with the need for coaching and also learning from practices. So this is evolving leaders coming up within the system. You are bringing people up, not saying this is the structure, it's hierarchical, these are the people at the top, these are your leaders. No, it's bringing people up. It's recognizing talent, for lack of a better word, and saying, we're going to train you to be a leader in this movement.
Yes.
You know, we're going to give you the appropriate tools to be able to do that. So
does someone have to be at the top though and be the leader? Does someone have to be the face right now? Because I feel like we have a lot of faces. Like we have AOC, we have Elizabeth Warren, we have lots of different people.
I mean, those are different schools of thought, right? But there's never any one singular person doing the work. If there is a face, for lack of a better word, there's, you know, countless people, if it's a good movement, working to support the message that person is purporting.
I feel like we need a face.
We got to find a face. Maybe that's the next, that's not my advice, but maybe that's our next move.
But you know, like there needs to be some unity in that feeling, because I think people do feel so compartmentalized.
People need to be motivated. And I think the cult of personality works. I mean, look at Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He is the face for 50% of the people in this country.
Oh, that face.
I know. It's disgusting. So the last thing is embodying the belief that we can win. Remember this, guys. This is the most important thing. At different times in the up and down cycles that social movements go through, trainings can serve different purposes. At peak moments, when new people are flocking to the streets, they function most crucially as a means of absorption, allowing organizations to capture this energy. But at times when movements have less momentum, the trainings can instead work as mechanisms for promoting ongoing leadership development. In those moments, they can generate a bit of energy and start getting people working on things that feel slower but meaningful.
Yeah.
So our final thought here from the analysis, instead of conforming to critics' preferences and seeking to avoid polarization altogether, movements do better to carefully study how they can use it to their advantage. Understanding that both positive and negative polarization occur at the same time means that protesters can win, even when there's backlash. Protest movements take a gamble when they unsettle the status quo, but it's a risk worth taking. For it is only when movements appreciate how polarization can be used as a tool that they are poised to make their greatest gains. Don't be afraid of speaking your mind and standing for what you believe in just for fear of upsetting somebody or rocking the boat. The advice that Carolyn and I grew up with, which was you don't talk about religion and politics, is fucking bullshit. And I think has actively contributed to our division. You got to
talk about.
You got to talk.
And I lost it. I was going to say something good. Yeah.
Make a TikTok.
And don't.
For as long as it's around.
Yeah. Don't also to speak about the hope piece, take good care of yourself, take breaks, find community, find people that do believe with you. And that's what it was. Art and music. If you want to feel that heart connection and let your mind rest, go look at activism in art and dance and music.
Totally.
That feeds my soul.
Totally. And if that's the way you want to be inspired, if you're an artist, use what's going on right now if it feels genuine to inspire some creativity. Yeah. So good things come out of shitty situations, y'all.
Always.
All right, everybody. For as long as it's around, you can follow us on TikTok at TwatJC. We are slowly gravitating toward YouTube, which I think is just the world according to Jen and Carolyn, because we think that's going to be necessary for a lot of reasons. Yeah. I think we're on Instagram as well. Yeah. What is that?
World according to Jen and Carolyn.
Yeah. Awesome. We don't have a Facebook yet. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We're not big fans of Mark Zuckerberg. So we hate everybody. All right, everybody. We know times are tough. Shit's tough. Listen to the World According to Jen and Carolyn and get angry with us because we'll be there for you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.